You know, recently I was reading a book and it wasn't one of the Mr. Men series, which is very out of character for me. It was Sally Young's Paper Emperors, which I've got to say, better than Mr. Men, better than Where's Wally. There was this incredible point in it where he's talking about, is talking about the fact that once unions were formed anywhere in Australia, all of a sudden, the Broken Hill Times, why unions are gonna broken you! The crux of that being that since the very beginning of Federation, both the business elite and the political elite have realised that the biggest threat to their power structure, of course, has and always will be organised labour. And they realised very quickly on, you can just fill papers with a bunch of bullshit and that stops them from getting membership and also just poisons their influence in the community. So there has always been this very obvious link between the press and the destruction of the unions. That's the entire point of their existence since Federation, and nothing has changed since, except for now I think that it's so deeply bred into them that they're essentially those turn-spit dogs. Look at this ugly little Chihuahua cross sausage terrier. I mean, I'm glad that these things have been bred out of existence. They look like they had miserable lives. Look at what it says about them. Turn-spit dogs were described as long-bodied, crooked-legged, and ugly dogs with a suspicious, unhappy look about them. I would be pretty suspicious about my existence too. Just like, there's got to be more to life than this. But let's just go into the video now because we're just going to be shitting on Wiley Darley the entire time. The point is, all I'm saying is, he is a turn-spit dog that still exists, as is the rest of the press. They are bred for one reason and one reason only, and that is to shit on unions. It's very evident in the project's coverage, and all of that has been completely forgotten. It is so conditioned into their mind that now they just have the little crooked legs and don't know why.
Sydney, come to my show Wednesday and Friday. Now, back to the show.
We're going to be watching some stuff from the project, and I think you'll notice a pattern very quickly on, which is that Carrie Bickmore doesn't give a shit about these segments at all. And the other one that you'll notice is that every time a union rep is ever on mainstream television, I swear to f***ing God, the backpacker murderer gets a fairer hearing than they do. The president of the Major Crimes Unit in Season 2 of The Wire, they are there solely to go after the unions.
What about Sally McManus? I'm not hearing her name anywhere.
Actually, this is probably not a good reference because this is a doc one. But to my knowledge, they are not importing prostitutes like they were in The Wire, but they are treated as such. Look.
Port Botany bosses Patrick Terminals say the Maritime Union is holding the nation to ransom.
Yes, there's the nice lemon and herb glaze over the chickens. Good turn, spit dog. Good. The glaze is these union thugs are holding medicine to ransom for a selfish pay rise, said by people on millions of dollars a year, despite the fact they have one of the worst rated shows in the country, despite endless propping up as well. It's just like, Jesus Christ. Could you imagine if Paul Michaela's face was on every bus like Waleed Ali's? Could you imagine how much membership that union would get? I'd sign up. I don't even know where the the docks are. I assume it's near the ocean. But these every time you're just like, oh, okay, thank you for reminding me not to tune into you.
I'm told there's some 90,000 containers out there. That includes medical supplies. We're in the middle of a COVID recession and there's supplies on ships that need to come ashore. It's extortion, and I won't put up with it.
See, look at all of the framing of this in all of the graphics that the people actually pay attention to, and then as soon as these guys start speaking, they go back and eat their dinners. But while they're explaining all of it, they're saying that they're denying the Australian public medicine, and they're trying to make it out as much as possible like it was just this permanent strike across the entire shoreline, when in reality it was just like, okay, well, if you're not paying us for overtime, we're not going to be doing overtime. And then you get this national emergency coming out. It is the exact same pattern as Federation. You have politics, you have big business, and you have the press all sitting there to converge this narrative that they're, I don't know, deliberately trying to kill your grandma, which is so It's so infuriating because that's exactly what Scott Morrison was doing while announcing that. Just coming out and being like, this is just really shameful behaviour, Paul Michaelia. Anyway, time to completely ignore the entire aged care system again. That's right, I've scheduled in ignoring the aged care system. No, I'm not even looking at the report. I'm just staring at the wall the entire time and it's lunchtime. Nice.
Patrick and the Maritime Union have a bruising history. Their 1998 waterfront dispute among Australia's most bitter industrial action.
Isn't it weird how little action happens in Australia that I still remember that on the news? Just a bunch of guys in mullets smacking a bus from the 90s. Like, I swear, that's all I remember from the 90s. Tony Lockett and some guy that looked exactly like Tony Lockett yelling, "Scab! Scab!"
No one is backing down.
We cannot have the militant end of the union movement effectively engaging in a campaign of extortion against the Australian people.
Now, I'll just give you Paul's side of the story so we can just focus on the questioning that the project gives them. But Paul's saying that, no, that is not the case. At the beginning of that year, they went to Patrick's and said, can we just have a 2.5% increase, pretty much just to match inflation back in the good old days? And then Patrick's obviously said, no, f*** off. And so then they were just like, okay, well, then we just won't work overtime then. And now they're painting that as, you've seen Lord of the Rings, you know how you can't negotiate with orcs? That's because they're militant, like the unions. Australia's Helm's Deep and Scott Morrison's Legolas. Obviously, he's clearly a sex symbol. Now, also, pay close attention to this because it's exactly the same as what happened when they were reporting on the Darling and all the fish kills back in the day. You can tell how little a shit these people give about anything that doesn't involve the celebrity Pink, which for can you change your name? Your hair hasn't been pink for 10 years.
Paul, the PM has refused to rule out using the military to end the delays at Patrick's. What's your response?
Right there, straight off the bat, when the unions don't work for work that they're not getting paid for, that is some militant action. But Scott Morrison sending in the military is just, yeah, have you got to react to that? Like you Twitch streamer? What's your take? I can't get over this one-to-one. The unions are behaving in a militant fashion while Scott Morrison threatening to send in the military is an equal response to, nah, that's my shift over. You sure about that, punk?
He is questioning the timing of it, though. He says, given everything that's going on at the moment, that it's insulting to be doing it right now.
Man, you know what watching the press professionally is like? It's like watching Groundhog Day on Channel 10 that you used to watch every Groundhog Day, but that was actually interesting. This is just boring Groundhog Day. They use the same framing over and over every time. It's, now's not the time. Now's not the time where they're talking about, I don't know, bushfires linked to climate change. Not the time. Daryl Maguire doing shifty links with Gladys Berejiklian. Why did I have to step down? It's not the time. It's never the time. They are your lazy housemate. It's just they have less stains on their shirt. Hey, can you walk the dog? Oh, well, this is pretty shameful behaviour, I must say. I mean, the dog is clearly sleeping at the moment and you want me to interrupt him at this moment. You really should reflect on your behaviour. I'm telling you, the only difference between those two people is hairspray and they actually earn money in a currency instead of trading weed for PlayStation games. Even when the press are forced to talk about the unions, but they can't get shots of dudes in flannelette shirts smoking durries refusing you medicine. Even when it's something as clear-cut as the guy heading the Royal Commission into Union Corruption, Dyson Hayden, going to a Liberal Party fundraiser and then the union's lawyers saying, you think you might be a little bit biased in your view here, and then that guy thinking in his infinite unbiased wisdom, no, I've thought about it and no, I'm probably the best person on earth to be heading this. I will continue to do so. Source me. And when there's something as clear-cut as that, well, then it's time to bring in the big guns, the biggest brain in Australia, Waleed Ali, with his point that blows all of the union's arguments out of the water. Don't you think that Labor's phrase, pass the pub test, is a bit lame? Now look at them communicating to the public that the Australian Building and Construction Commission, which really should have just been renamed Manufactured Mass Manslaughter on a National Scale, that was horrific. You can see so many more deaths on site ever since that thing was created, and it's an absolute miracle that it's gone, or how the project describes it to Australia.
The government's move to strip the controversial construction industry watchdog of its powers, sparking heated debate today.
This is a body which was very politically driven.
You have an ideological hatred of good behaviour in the building industry.
Focused on, whether or not people were wearing particular stickers.
This is not about stickers on helmets.
I hate it. You see the framing too, right? Oh, politicians, they just go on and on, don't they? I mean, Liberals probably more correct, but Jesus, this politics is so boring. It's construction workers needlessly dying. That's what the ABCC is about, and you will never ever hear that uttered in the mainstream press. Not once. In fact, when it is brought up, you watch what happens.
Brekkie is better at Hungry Jack's with Jack's Cafe's rich, velvety, smooth, better tasting barista coffee.
Well, that was clearly not the correct clip. I'm happy to know that that's the case, but some ray of hope in this otherwise cloudy day.
Dave, your union's reportedly been fined more than $15 million since 2016. I'm guessing you must be thrilled with the decision to strip the watchdog from its powers?
See, this is exactly what we were pointing out when the project just showed IPA study for the next 8 minutes with a bunch of their crap effects in the background, with a report that if you handed that in high school, you'd get flunked for it. Most of it was blank pages, right? And it was the same combination of things of just evil people feeding dumb people lines. That's what Carrie Bickmore is there. So she's just asking, well, I'm just asking if he's thrilled or not. But honestly, what they're trying to say is, here's the subtext. You have been fined $15 million. You must have been doing wrong things the whole time. That's why you were fined $15 million. When the design of that body was to just needlessly sap the unions of resources. Why? So they can't campaign in elections, and they can't campaign to their own constituents and tell them the benefits of joining the union, such as you're dying. But watch this next point. This attracted the attention of the true watchdog of this country, the Daily Mail, and I say that with sincerity as well. I truly do think that they may not get the facts right, but they at least care about the truth. They were the ones circulating this clip where I started to think, my God, look, Waleed Ali, every time, it is so predictable what he is going to say about unions, which is, well, why don't you just respect the rule of law? Oh, it's weighted against you? Well, why don't you change the laws? Oh, you can't get into government because of me? Oh, well.
Clearly, you'd support the abolition of that commission. I suppose its defenders would say, though, that it prosecutes some important things. So earlier this month, your union was fined $840,000 for coercive action at Brisbane construction sites. Are those sorts of prosecutions in the public interest?
Oh, well, I think that we're having a look at that for a potential appeal, so I won't comment on it too much. But I will say this, the penalties of $840,000, we had one for $900,000 recently for a 2-hour protest at a workplace in Sydney, a peaceful protest. We were fined $900,000. To put this into context, Janelle and the contractor responsible for the appalling safety that led to the death of an 18-year-old apprentice were fined $900,000 up in the same city of Sydney a couple of years ago. They paid not 1 cent because they were covered by insurance. You see, the point here is that we get these lurid allegations of someone swearing on a building site, saying the wrong thing, and massive fines, massive prosecution, huge taxpayer dollars used to do those prosecutions, but not one thing done to try and improve the sort of appalling safety conditions that led to the death of that young worker.
Get ready for this. Get ready. He is willing to say, you can rewind the tape on what I said here. He's f***ed himself. Watch.
I see your point, Dave, but they don't actually have to be comparable. They can be treated in separate ways, right? So if the builder is negligent in that situation, then that could be its own civil suit, and any final damages that be paid would probably be in the hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars if you're talking seriously about something like that. Isn't that a separate issue?
Its own little civil suit. We're talking about the death of a young man, Waleed. I don't know what world you live in, but the world I live in. I'm sorry. I appreciate the point. I appreciate the point you're making. I appreciate the point you're making. The world I live in and our members live in is that there are serious safety hazards, the most appalling safety circumstances, and I don't think it's appropriate to diminish it by calling it a little civil suit.
No, I didn't say...
This is the WorkSafe prosecutor.
Sorry, you're verbling me there.
I hate how brainwashed they are. You just really feel like going to Waleed Ali and just looking at him in his eyes and being like, dude, there is a reason that you empathised with Scott Morrison, and it's because both of you won't fuck off. You've made your millions. Why are you still on television when you don't have a fan base? If only you could just put into his mind how everybody else sees him and the rest of the press. There's so many tropes that the press always resort to. They always resort to, you have to respect the law when the law doesn't inconvenience them, as we saw in Crikey's case. And another thing they do, they overextend their hand a little bit too much, like dismissing the death of an 18-year-old that could have been very easily avoided had unions been allowed to check safety on sites. But the Liberals always strip them of that because money. It's just cheaper to not have the unions there and say, why is this wheelbarrow of bricks hanging on by a rope? Surely that's a little bit dangerous. Because we wanted to see how many bricks we could put in the wheelbarrow without the rope snapping! I don't know, but this is a man who frequently pretends that he laments the death of the youth and how unfortunate death is. And look, a lot of it does look fairly performative, and right there you can see that it is, because he is really dismissive of the fact that somebody who definitely did not deserve to die, that guy was just on site doing his job. That guy should still be alive today, and Waleed Ali dismisses this as some little silly suit over here. This is not the same as you getting fined the exact same amount for peacefully protesting things like this happening. Do you see? Do you see how they think? It's just it's amazing how they cannot put these two things together in their mind. And then he sits there, when you point out their programming, every time, what do journalists retreat to? When you point out how hypocritical or how they've just been indoctrinated by the Liberal talking points, I guess, when you point that out to them, what do? They always say something along the lines of, "You're verbling me! Stop verbling me!"
Sorry, you're verbling me there.
He's not verbling you, he's quoting you, look!
I'm not saying it's a
Well,
little...
I'm happy to replay the tape.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Smug little... See, this is the best advertisement you could ever do, unions. All you have to do is just put up billboards everywhere saying, hate Waleed Ali, join your union. Nothing would trigger that man more. He hates them. Look at that dismissive little smirk at the end of something that he said. Yeah, you do that. Oh, geez. I wonder why you have no public support at all anymore, Waleed. Seriously, like, the one redeemable thing that Waleed Ali could do to make the last 10 years of his career worthwhile is he could rekindle the union movement. I just wanted to show you that because I want you to know that ever since the press has been operating in this country on not even just a national scale, on anything close to a regional scale, it has been there to destroy the union movement. There is a reason that you think it's filled with dodgy criminals that does absolutely nothing for you and does absolutely nothing for this country. Like, we're talking about the movement that gave you Medicare, for Christ's sakes. We're talking about the movement that removed Scott Morrison. I mean, that alone is worth the membership, surely. This is just on a national scale. Like, this is just the macro benefits of being part of a union. But in terms of you personally, we're talking about an extra $100 a week if you sign up. And the entire point of the press from day one is to try and hide that information from you. Don't let them do it. This is how they just want you to divert ever diminishing wages into their little shitty vacuum cleaners that they're selling, instead of you getting more money that you can actually afford a Dyson like these have. That's what I'm talking about right there. Get a Dyson. Yeah, that's right. I'm paid by Big Dyson. Now hoover over that like button and see you next time.
Please share and comment below. Comment.